Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all of you on behalf of APAC News Network to the third Global Education and Skills Conclave. And we are having a number of tracks in parallel catering to both higher education and school education. In the morning, we had an inaugural session where a lot of the policymakers from both central government as well as state government talked about the educational framework from the policy perspective and how technology is playing a role there, and it was a very informative session. And after that, in the post lunch, in the school track, this is the first panel discussion that we are starting, and we are talking on a very interesting topic in terms of how schools are preparing for tomorrow's hybrid learning. So, though maybe the impact and the pandemic is still not over, but actually schools are reopening. And what looks likely that going forward, we might have sort of both a physical learning and a virtual learning mode, a more a hybrid kind of mode. And what are some of the dynamics and challenges involved there that we would like to discuss in the discussion here. So it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce the panelists here. Mm, uh, we have with us Dr. Amrita Vora, Director Principal, James International School. Welcome, Dr. Vora.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Snehal Pinto, Director of RAN International Group of Institution. Welcome, Dr. Pinto.
Thank you, Rajneesh. Good afternoon to everyone.
We have with us Dr. S.K. Rathore, Founder, Chairman, and Managing Director of the Sanford Group of Schools. I think we've just lost him. Technically, he will just be joining in again. Next, we have with us Mr. Kanak Gupta, Director, Set MR Jaipuria Schools. Welcome to the show, Mr. Gupta.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Next, we have with us Amal Arora, Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Shamrock and Shempur Group of Schools. Welcome, Mr. Arora.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Good afternoon. And we have with us Aarti Kansil. She's an EdTech Program Lead from ViewSonic. Welcome, Aarti, to the program. I think you are on mute. Aarti, you are on mute.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. Glad to meet you.
And we earlier missed him. We have with us Dr. S.K. Rathore, Founder, Chairman, and Managing Director of Sanford Group of Schools. Welcome, Dr. Rathore. Thanks. As I mentioned earlier, today's topic is around the dynamics and challenges of hybrid learning. So, before I embark, just some hygiene rules to keep the panel discussion short and crisp and wrap it up on time. May I request each panelist to stick to an answer to not more than 2 to 3 minutes each. The idea is so that we can discuss more points and have a more meaningful discussion from which more best practices may emerge, and which the different school fraternity can emulate those best practices, some of those. So, the first question which I would like to put before all the panelists is, we are talking about hybrid learning, blended learning. Sometimes the two terms are very interchangeably used. So, precisely, I'd like to know two things. One, hybrid or blended, what are the in terms of their dynamics, what are the differences between a hybrid learning and a blended learning, and what are likely 2022 onwards the schools, as partially students go back to physical mode, which model schools are likely to apply, whether it will be the hybrid model or the blended model, and also whatever be the model, what are going to be the key components of that? So I will start with you, Amrita. Maybe.
All right. Thank you for that question. Yes, we all do see these terms used fairly interchangeably. To just define them more simply, I think hybrid is more to do with the word parallel, where some students are attending in person and the others are online. And blended is where you are sequentially aligning online and offline. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. And as of now, with schools slowly opening up and the uncertainty sort of continuing around the pandemic, most schools are being able to do or doing in their own way and trying to do is hybrid learning, where we have this as a situation and parent consent is critical and children are attending only based on that. Education, I think we have to remember, is a big equalizer. And the pandemic, apart from various other things, has also taught us that yes, there is a digital divide which has had its own set of challenges and further created challenges during the last 2 years when so many people did not have access. But then there are also so many ways at the same time to look at hybrid models and to see how we can really have some social impact created around this. In fact, at Tomorrow, which is also another initiative by GEMS Education, we are already talking to various state governments and various other governments across different parts of the world on how we can really make this work as a way to reach out to each child so that quality education really is accessible, and there are systems which make it really really viable and and at a cost point which is workable for everyone, and eventually we're able to make those within the classroom. Coming to more progressive schools, um, there is a whole different learning algorithm itself to hybrid learning and to blended learning. So teachers really need to be well prepared for it. Before the pandemic, when we all went remote, we floated a very detailed policy on remote learning, which we spread out, and all stakeholders need to be in sync. Now, when things started opening up towards the beginning of this year and a little at the last, we floated a policy for hybrid and blended learning, which again defines all of these things in good detail. The biggest advantage which I've seen is that whether we are in remote or hybrid or blended patterns, what it really enhances is a meta learning landscape for children, where children take ownership of their learning. There's a whole lot of student agency. It sort of naturally propels it, and it makes data driven decision making very very useful. Of course it has always been, but it makes it easier to some extent if you're using the right tools and everybody is professionally equipped and in sync with the thought process and the vision. Then we're able to use all that and ensure the kind of flexibility required in the system, ensure the extension of learning and the personalization of learning required for every child. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, some of those points I'll come later about the cost, but the most important point that you have mentioned is about that meta learning and the decision driven for the education, the learning in either it can be the hybrid or the blended model. I'll come to you, Snehal, now. So I'll just rephrase the question a little bit. We have heard the dynamics difference between a blended and hybrid learning. More specifically, I would like to understand from you what, according to you, are the most critical components of blended learning for our schools in 2022, and how are you looking at those key components?
So thank you for the question, Rajneesh, and congratulations to APAC from all of us at Ryan's for organizing this, time together for learning together. Just coming back to it, in addition to what my colleague said, I think for me personally, it's been about the three C's, and that is about connect, about community, and curriculum design. While there are common elements to both the models, whether it is in the design and delivery of the lesson plan, or the learning engagements, or the environment, and the method of assessment, which may vary from section to section. For me, these three kind of underline the elements at all sections for these two models. And connecting with children is essential for learning to occur, as well as ensuring facilitating their communities on the virtual platforms, which further develop and enable shared learning and feedback for us to improve together. And lastly, the curriculum design, while it provides engaging content and lessons, it also facilitates for effective learning for our children as well as for teachers at their level before coming to the children. And I think for all of us to be on the same page, these three things are something I see as the main components for learning to occur, effective learning to occur.
Thanks. And that basically very nicely summarizes the importance, and assessment was another important area that you talked about. Maybe we'll take that up later in the discussion. I'll come to you, Dr. Rathod, now. My question is one, what I asked to the two panelists before in terms of the key elements of hybrid or blended learning, which from your school's perspective, how are you looking at in 2022? And also maybe a little bit more looking further, uh, if we can broadly divide schools classes into primary, mid school, and high school, the impact of this blended learning and the dynamics of this blended learning would be different for these three categories of students. So, what's your opinion on that? Dr. Rathod? I think there's some technical issue again. So I'll put this question to you, Amol. I'll come to you, Amol, now. And the question is in terms of one, from your school's perspective, how are you looking at hybrid or blended learning in 2022? And as an extension, if we divide schools into primary, mid school, and high school, how would the impact be in these three categories?
Yes, thank you. I think it's interesting. It's so fluid right now that we're changing from day to day, and with the South African variant now coming in suddenly. For example, Haryana suddenly announced that we're not opening fully from, and one day before they gave a notice here last night. So it's very interesting. I mean, this means that we have the hybrid where some children are at home, some children are in school. Blended I think, is a future. I mean, that's where we are all going towards. Hybrid, I feel, is a temporary thing. It works much better with older children. Younger children, I think, need to be in a physical classroom. Hybrid for a teacher is very difficult for younger children to have two sets of audiences at the same time. So I don't think it really works. I think for that, if it's younger classes, school should actually split up the sections, have one only where the teacher can focus on the online classes and one for the physical one. The older ones, so the roomers and the zoomers, the ones in the room and the one on Zoom, the older children can manage them because they have a level of self-motivation, self-discipline where they're able to sit down and listen. So I think we are moving towards, ultimately, blended learning is here to stay, and that's where the world is going to go to. Hybrid, I think it's a temporary thing, maybe till we are able to, get out of this corona situation, and maybe only in cases where it's a question of access, where there's some children who really want access to a good classroom, they could have that. But how will this evolve? How will teachers adapt? How will technology adapt? We might have cases where a set of children in the classroom, a set of children learning in a remote location, maybe NRI kids, maybe kids in villages are learning, a set of children who watch the recorded sessions for access because of their time zones. So are we moving towards that kind of a classroom? Maybe it's going to be interesting, but right now I think the focus is getting our children psychologically in a cheerful mood to be in a classroom. That's what we are all aiming for. I think physical is where we want to go. Will we see a new model is emerging even from hybrid called high flex, where some children want to attend someday in school, someday in. So we're going like we're getting layers after layers. High flex is a new word now. So I want to go to school this week. Next week I don't want to go to school. So are we going to see schools like that? I don't think schools are going to be very comfortable. We are still very rigid structures in terms of how we operate. But the good thing is, this has forced everybody to rethink the role of schools. Why should schools exist? What is the need for schooling? Is there a role for homeschooling for certain kind of children? What is the role of technology? And I think we've shaken up that this thing very well, which was always was technology was always a perennial bridesmaid. The next big thing always going to happen, and nothing really changed pre-COVID. The last 150 years, schooling had not changed. So that's the good thing that's going to come out of it. And everyone has been forced to adapt. Whether your heart is in ensuring your children are learning, or whether your heart is in ensuring that I get paid the school fees. That's why I need to do this. So whatever motivates different people, but at least the school fraternity has done a great job. And with this new South African variant, everyone's now keeping their fingers crossed. We don't know what's going to happen, and is it going to be a delta into exponential kind of a situation, or is it going to be the end? Is this the announcement of the endemic as well? So I think the schools will remain flexible. I think hybrid is going to be for the next few months at least. We are seeing some parents withdrawing from school back because they saw something on TV, and that's already happening. There are a set of parents who are now feeling confident, so they're moving to the physical. So it's going to be all fluid, and I think teachers need to really be very flexible.
Yeah, this fluidity you have talked about, that's really critical. We never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And as you mentioned, most of our school structures are very rigid. And now perhaps the pandemic has taught us to be very flexible in that. So next I'll come to you, Kanak. Now question is similar to what I asked the other panelists in terms of your experience about a hybrid or blended learning, and how are the students you are seeing, how are they sort of receiving it? Over to you, Kanak.
Great. Thanks for having me here, and I hope that you'll give us at least 2-3 hours to discuss this, because that's a kind of that this panel would require to come with some solutions, and some very distinguished educators here, and I'm very proud and happy to be here. So to answer your question simply, actually there's no common template that exists to determine whether to educate students remotely, bring them back into the classroom, or create a hybrid model that combines both. There isn't one, and we're all experimenting. And I sort of I'll take it with a pinch of salt when you said that the education systems are very rigid. I really think that there is a lot of experimentation, and there's a lot of dynamism that the fraternity has shown over the last 18-19 months. And we are so proud of everyone. We are so proud that we all collaborate. All the people that you have on the panel, and all the people, we are all friends, and we talk, we exchange so many things openly. So there is a lot of dynamism that's come into the fraternity. To come to your question as to what is the kind of inputs required, I'll tell you, it's very important to focus not just on the methodology, but also on what kind of learning are we looking at. Amol mentioned it briefly that we are not talking as much about the mental aspect of children. We should talk about it, because the learning part will be taken care of by technology, be it hybrid, be it remote, or be it even in the blended approach, whereby we are still experimenting and we are trying to find out what will be the future. It's important to understand that the learning part will be taken care of by technology. It's the emotional aspect, the social aspect. It will be an irresponsible, irreversible travesty unless we focus on that. It's important to engage students on projects. So that's what everyone's done. We are trying to create an environment. We're not trying to reverse calculate as to what is the learning outcome. We're trying to make a system which will be sustainable. We are trying to make a system which will possibly allow students to learn irrespective of what environment they are in. I think that is very, very important. I'll give you an example. When I went to the school, once the school's buildings reopened, I went to the schools and I share this very openly. Students told me that the biggest problems they are facing is they've forgotten how to write because they've not been holding their pens and pencils. The uniforms don't fit because they're out of activity, and all of them have put on some amount of weight. They're not used to attending classes sitting in a classroom in a disciplined manner. They are attending classes from the bed, from the toilets. They are not used to being in the environment of a classroom. The biggest drawback of this entire experience was students had forgotten how to ask questions. They were going ahead with the lecture methodology, listening to teachers unless they were engaged with activities from the teachers. It's a very, very important skill that you engage the students as part of the teaching learning process. Otherwise, if it's a lecture methodology, be it hybrid, be it remote, how does it matter? Be it blended, it doesn't matter. That's the only methodology that works. Other than that, when you look at interdisciplinary learning, when you look at projects, when you look at flipped, when you look at case study based learning, our schools and all the people you have on the panel, all our schools do this. It works effectively because you are then essentially engaging the children as part of the teaching learning process, not making it a one-way street. And I think these are the tips that I would give to everyone. One last comment. There are a lot of educators who would have tuned in, and this is one advisory that I give to everyone. In case you are not investing time, effort, energy, resources into upskilling of your teachers and non-teaching staff, please start doing it. Please don't do it just because the NEP is asking us to do it, or just because the pandemic has come and now we need to upskill ourselves with technology and engaging of children. We should be doing it irrespective, because today there is COVID-19, tomorrow there will be Soviet-19, day after tomorrow there will be a Lovid-24. There will be something or the other that will always bring us down. Pollution has ensured that schools of Delhi NCR have closed. There will be other reasons as to why schools will close, but now we've learned that we can run schools remotely, effectively engaging children. That is the learning we need to take forward as part of our commitment to the world, to the society, to the country as responsible educators. Over to you, back to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Kanak. And you touched a very important and critical aspect on the psychological and mental impact of on the students. Really, in fact, and lastly, you touched upon a very important point on how the faculties are geared for this. With that, I'll come to Dr. Rathore with that question. This blended learning or hybrid learning, whatever is the future, whatever we call it, how are the faculties geared for that from your perspective? And I'll also add the question on which I asked earlier. Students, if we break them into three categories, the primary students, the mid-class students, and the high school students, what has been the impact on each of these categories? So faculties and the three categories of students. Over to you, Dr. Rathore.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rajneesh, for inviting me on such a wonderful discussion. So, see, whatever mode of delivering education any school or any educator will opt for these days, whether it is blended or flip learning or virtual or whatever you say, give the name, it is very important to ensure the what Kanak touched, to ensure the well-being or mental well-being of the child. One thing. Second, we are delivering content only, basically. Whatever classroom teaching were happening, whatever teachers were used to teach in the classroom, now the teachers are teaching on the screen. But rightly said by Kanak, it is very important to take care of the mental state of the child, physical state of the child. So whether it is virtual learning or blended learning, no virtual space can create can give the solution of these issues. Basically, how come we ensure child is doing physical work or physical exercise or physical, they are playing with their peer group? How can anybody ensure the child is mentally not so disturbed? एक्चुअली प्रॉब्लम कहाँ है कि बच्चे जो अपने पीयर ग्रुप में जिस तरह से एंजॉय करते थे, या जो बात करते हैं, जो स्टोरी शेयर करते हैं, जो प्रॉब्लम्स डिस्कस करते हैं, इश्यूज डिस्कस करते हैं, वो सब वर्चुअली पॉसिबल नहीं है. यस, हम एग्जाम के लिए बच्चे को प्रिपेयर कर सकते हैं थ्रू ऑल दीज काइंड ऑफ मॉडलिटीज, बट वी this is also one of the truth. We don't, so I don't know how many more months we have to work virtually. Many of the states have deferred their decision to reopen physically schools. Today Haryana came, and then Maharashtra, Pune and Mumbai, they have deferred their orders to reopen the school, but we need to ensure the education must be continued. And as far as teachers education is concerned, or teachers skill upgradation is concerned, this must be an integral part of any institution, whether it is a primary school or preschool or 10+2 school. It should always be there. होता क्या है कि हमारे सिस्टम में, चाहे हम पब्लिक स्कूल्स रन कर रहे हैं, प्राइवेट स्कूल्स रन कर रहे हैं, गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स है, और इट इज ए प्री स्कूल, we always focus about the education of the children. बच्चों के लिए क्या करना है, अभी ये टेक्नोलॉजी लगानी है, अभी स्मार्ट क्लास लगानी है, अभी हम टैब लैब लगा देते हैं, अभी हम एक एक्टिविटी और क्रिएट कर देते हैं. बट nobody think, most of the school, nobody means most of the larger part of the school don't think about the skill upgradation of their teachers. But last 21 months have taught us how important it is to upgrade skills of our teachers. The institution who were working on their teachers skill upgradation, they started quickly their session in the on the right time. The schools still are struggling, who have not bothered about the skills of their teachers. So I strongly believe and advocate about the skill upgradation, timely skill upgradation. I tell you, in my system, every year we have at least 2 skill upgradation program, one in summer vacations, one in winter vacations, and in between many programs we conduct. So this is the integral part of running any institution in the right way. Or I can say, आप इस तरह का जो situation, as we are living in Delhi NCR, Kanak is in Delhi NCR, Amol is from Delhi NCR, even Abrata is from Delhi NCR. We people knows how difficult it is in running any institution in Delhi NCR. If any riots happen, सबसे पहले स्कूल बंद करा देते हैं. If this pandemic happen, schools are closed. If pollution level goes up, schools close. So it is very important for a teacher, for educator to know how to deliver education on time with the help of technology. Rajneesh, up to you.
Thanks. So 2 important aspects you touched about. One, the actuality, what you last mentioned, technology is important, especially in today's light, when we don't know when and how the physical part might get postponed for a time being. So technology is imperative. On the other hand, you also talked about beyond technology, what is the emotional impact, if I may say. So if IQ is obviously one important aspect of school teaching, but the EQ, the emotional quotient part, is also of the students, is another important thing we must keep in mind. So now, since we are on the technology part, I'll come to you, Aarti. Now, as a edtech solution provider, how do you think this technology can be provided to students to sort of help them, especially in this stop-start thing, the way it's happening with schools right now, and likely blended learning model that will follow a future? So what role can an edtech solution provider play in helping schools here?
Thank you for posing this question to me, and I was very happy to hear all the views of the esteemed panelists in front of me. Coming to how EdTech is going to help students be a part of or rise up to this challenge of being a part of classroom, and how teachers have upskilled themselves in the last 21 months of the pandemic. And yes, I also live in Delhi, so I know how every event basically affects schools. The first thing that gets affected is school functioning. Schools get closed at the drop of a hat. So I would say that it's been an ongoing event in Delhi that you have been experiencing, how people have not been, our students get affected, their studies get affected. And the upskilling part is something that I've seen quite a few schools doing with their teachers, training them, having constant mm, sessions of professional development. So that's one thing where teachers were skilled by a lot of schools, but on the other hand, we also saw a lot of other schools that were left behind, which still believed in the traditional model, and the schools that believed that nothing can replace physical teaching. They were woken up to their own idea of being stuck in the traditional forms of teaching and having to rise to the challenge of that the pandemic threw in their faces, and having to uh, move to the online mode of teaching, quickly adapting themselves and their teachers to Google Classrooms and Microsoft Teams and Zoom classrooms. The students, I feel, uh, were somewhere in the middle of adapting technology as a part of their life, because uh, most of them have grown up being surrounded by mobile phones around them. Uh, they were pretty okay with handling the mobile phone. For a lot of them, they were much quicker to adapting to technology than their parents were. And we could see that when a lot of parents were required to move to the online mode, I think their children rose to the challenge of helping their parents to adapt to technology. So over there, I see that children rose to the challenge of adapting to the technology to engage in learning. But over here, as an edtech solution provider, we also see that having mobile phones in their hands constantly became a problem for the parents, because they were constantly anxious about what all exposures would the student or would their child get when they had an instrument as dangerous as a mobile phone in their hands. So I feel that in the edtech as an ed solution provider, we are constantly working in providing uh, a platform where students can interact from their homes with a safe instrument. It doesn't only have to be a mobile phone. It could be a basic iPad that they can use, which only has an educational software in it, and use that to engage with the classrooms. The softwares that we see around us in development and in constant upgradation are something that allowing teachers to engage with students also, just like in physical classrooms they would, where there were sessions were interactive. Students are right in front of the teacher, so the teacher can see all the 30 students in her classroom in the on her small screen, as well as you know thanks to the touchscreen technology, they have the classrooms and the whiteboards available to them to do all the work that they used to do on the blackboard, available to them in the form of the touchscreen pads or touchscreen systems, and their phones became their new blackboards. So yes, this kind of adaptation is something that I think the teachers and the schools that have risen to the challenge of uh, uh, you know upskilling their teachers and providing them the resources to be on that platform and be on the same platform where they can engage more effectively. Yes, somewhere we can say that their emotional well-being and their physical well-being was uh, affected, but the fact that the pandemic also taught people the importance of family and familial bonds, and uh, doing the physical labor at home, the when we had all become so busy in our lives and not taken any note of how a lot of work was getting done our respective places. The pandemic forced everyone to take up ownership of the work themselves. So I won't say that the pandemic has uh, it has uh, it has brought its own good and bad points for every person. I think no one in the panel or in the world actually would have not taken up domestic chores at one point of time thanks to the pandemic. So yes, I will see technology as a very important role. EdTech playing a still being a major game player in the field of education. But and yes, thanks to AI also we can see that how a lot of AI is now also catering to emotional uh, 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 the emotional part of or emotional well-being of a person. So we see a lot of AI now talking about how it can read facial cues of a person to sense a person's emotional state of mind, and quickly inform the uh, uh, the relevant people in who are who are using that software to assess the needs of their audience. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, understand. Thanks for that. I'll come to one point, elaborate on this was raised by Amrita, I think, in the beginning on the budgetary and the challenges. Broadly speaking, now we have sort of arrived at a consensus on the need of technology and the necessity in terms of how we handle the future, whatever be it a blended or hybrid learning model. Now, my question is this technology practical? There are a lot of challenges. One is in terms of the devices, in terms of the quality of connectivity, all these one is the quality and second is the economic challenges, the budgetary challenges. Now and all of your schools, I'm sure, will have maybe either through EWS quota or otherwise also students from different socioeconomic strata, parents who are from different socioeconomic strata. Now, considering these non-uniformity of devices and quality of connectivity, how can schools ensure a very uniform, standardized quality of education, and at the same time, this budgetary constraints and challenges? Now, I'll keep this question open. Any panelist can take it up.
Okay. Rajesh ji, in fact, a very good question. And yes, this has been one of the key challenges that I think all of us have faced during the pandemic, particularly more so in 2020. By the end of it, I think most of us found our solutions, our own. There is no cookie cutter solutions. And I don't even call it a uniform, standardized approach that is required, because every child is unique and different. Every child's situation is very different, and there are so many other factors that are prior learning, and we can go on about that. But the thing is that we really need very personalized kind of solutions. And yes, the school does need to invest. All said and done, we've had scenarios where it was tough, but I think all of us have realized, even for this hybrid, which may be an emergency response at this point in time for us, as Amol pointed out. But for all of us, even for hybrid, for it to work as of now, the kind of Wi-Fi access or the speed and the quality of everything is required is comes at a much higher point. So as schools, we have ensured that within the school, brick and mortar school, we have managed that kind of infrastructure. Now, a lot of systems need to be rethought, certainly, and that rethinking has helped us. Devices can be any, and how can we ensure what applications which are also safe work on all those devices with similar results. We also at the same time do not want too many whole class or lecture based experiences, which is why what we in fact want is more collaborative working spaces for children, and for different groups of children, because it's very critical for them to be able to use their collective working memory. That helps, that reduces that cognitive overload that happens if too much of lecture or one shoe fits all kind of an approach is followed for anything to do with learning and teaching. So this is why lots and lots, and I think Kanak mentioned that there was some schools where children feel, oh, we haven't picked up a pencil. I think the one thing that has helped us in particular, and maybe many others, is that even when we went online, children kept doing a whole lot of written assignments. Written work continued even when we went online, and this has continued. And in fact, what data has shown us, students learning and attainments actually in mathematics and in aspects like reading have improved instead of gone bad. Lots of crowdfunding efforts and people coming together has been critical. Yes, we have EWS children and who did not have access. A lot of resources have been printed, made ready, and delivered to doorsteps. As and when the situation demanded, we've managed to do those things. A lot of devices have been arranged and aligned for certain children, and a lot of people have come out and have done those things. It's about bringing all the stakeholders together, and when we all, the school is eventually a community, and working with the community around. So when every stakeholder really believes in a shared vision and works together, there's no limit to what all we can do. So that's the kind of thing that's happened. A lot of times, yes, it was more than just providing the device. Device is something you could provide. Sometimes you didn't just have to provide the device, you also had to ensure that that person has digital access at their home. There's no internet connection. We even had to work on that to ensure that that child got that support. And now when things opened up, a lot of times very personalized, what we called booster sessions and things like that had to be done arranged for certain children where the prior knowledge gap became or was much larger. So all of these little initiatives, and as things come, we think and we plan, okay, this could go wrong, this could go wrong, this could go wrong, what else, how will we solve it? So if we just think in terms of solutions, I think a lot is possible. And very critical it is that whatever we do, when we're talking of blended learning or even in the hybrid model, our tools are critical because they make a lot possible even when we are hybrid. And hybrid is certainly way more difficult for a teacher because you're managing the ones offline and the ones online sitting in front of you. And you need to think of tasks which are workable and which are really engaging for the ones online and the ones. And you also need to ensure that they interact, they talk to each other. And there's nobody feeling isolated with too much of, and nobody just out and not there or on mute and therefore, not visible. And, oh, I was there, but I'm attending the lesson, but I'm an invisible observer. While the same thing may work well for one child too. So all of this is there, and all of this needs different kinds of solutions, and which is why no school is better than its teacher. Eventually, everything will be done by the teacher, right? No matter what you may or I may say here. So, this is the crux why teachers need consistent CPD, and where every teacher really is the owner. Every teacher figures out, okay, this is a solution I found, let's discuss, we'll do it this way. And I think the leadership has to ensure that they're empowered to do that, empowered to feel that, okay, sometimes I'll win, sometimes I'll learn. I mean, my principal has my back. I mean, ठीक है, गलती हो जाएगी तो चल जाएगा, मगर मुझे करना है, मुझे try करना है. That is critical. That is critical for every child. And some goal setting at the same time is critical. That drives that mindset or that decision making, which is dependent on which is a growth kind of a mindset, kind of decision making at every level.
I understand. That's perfect. In fact,
to add to that, Rajnish, to add to
please,
I think one of the greatest learnings for us as a community, as a school community, has been the resilience of the teachers, the agility that the teachers have demonstrated. and it's not come easy. Remember, there are 4 generations in the workplace, and for each generation to come up to the fore and pace themselves up, learning new ed tools, and making sure that they through experimentation have tried to maximize the benefits of both the synchronous and the asynchronous learning material, and through that also manage their time better. Both their work life balance in the initial months were like all over the place. There was no work life balance, but they kind of made their way, and that was possible because the larger ecosystem allowed that autonomy, and it was essential to do that. Also, there was regular communication, the accountability in front of the parents, also with the parents, also taking them in, including them in the process was essential. And as a result, I think us as a community have adapted now to this new, if you call this a new normal, but it is here to stay. And blended learning and hybrid learning, you can't like you asked the question, will we get a uniform standardized quality? While we believe each child is unique, then you got to understand their needs are different, the contexts are different, and therefore how we cater to them has to be different. One of the greatest benefits of this entire both the models and other approaches has been the flexibility to the learner, and for them to take ownership, and not just them, even for the teacher and even for the parent to understand that this is good, this is all right. Marks are not the end all of it. It's the assessment for learning that is going to help them improve themselves. So the feedback and the feed forward helps in the lesson design and delivery as well for the teacher. So that has been a big takeaway for us.
Okay, thanks. And what you were saying, both Amrita and Snehal has been saying about each student being unique. If I may add, even for many of the students, their home environment for many of the students might be different, might not be have been very conducive towards an education model, which in a normal physical school model that would have been mitigated to a large extent. But when they are studying from home, if the environment at all is not there, then that becomes an even more challenge. So, any other panelist would like to add to this here, how they are looking at ensuring, if I may say, more democratization of education amongst all the students?
Yeah, I can I'd love to add to that. I think it's not just a question of money and access. I think it's a question of choice also for every family. As talking about the work-life balance was out of completely whack in the first few months, and on top of that, you're getting a pay cut from your school. It was just a stressful time for everybody. So I think, and every family had their own notion of how learning should be, and every routine was different. So whether it was a question of access to devices, whether it's Wi-Fi, as you said, was it just a patriarchal hierarchy in our families where the boy child gets a device first, where the older children get the device first, and the younger children are lower in the hierarchy of who gets access. Our timings, same device, teacher is teaching while her children are having online classes. So it was just a khichdi kind of a concept. See, before COVID, we all as a society agreed that this is how we prepare children for the future. Children come to school, they study for 5-6 hours in school, they go back, they have tutorials, extra classes, and this tango was going on very well. Now suddenly everyone had, okay, I don't like this, I'm not going to pay. If I don't like this, I'll send my child to a cheaper school or a government school. So suddenly schools had to the ones who could succeed, as I said, use the word fluid, that flexibility became very, very important among schools who could survive, had to offer different options to different parents. So we talked about asynchronous, synchronous, printed lectures, things that they could, small group settings. Some schools were sending the teachers into the communities to interact with just 5 or 6 children. So the school is closed, but nobody says you can't have a meeting of 5 children. Calling children for play dates while the schools were closed. So I think, and again, when you offer something, some parents react, some parents don't want it, and every parent had that choice during this period. So schools had to have like a buffet of options for parents and say, okay, you choose what you like, and as long as your child is learning, you know your child. And schools actually had to partner with parents in the truest of sense. Earlier, the role of parents was, in traditional schools, was just pay the fees and get out and I'll see you on the PTM. Now they became the educators. So the partnership became very strong. I think parents really respected the teachers. हमसे तो एक नहीं संभलता, आप 35 कैसे संभालते हो? Parents giving that kind of feedback. So I think for schools it was those who could adapt to this. Parents actually loved it, and some children thrived in this environment. Shy children were able to come out of a shell. In some cases it went the other way around. Children who were actually doing okay suddenly went into a shell because nobody was asking them to switch on the cameras, and they already had an excuse, ma'am, mera camera nahi hai, my Wi-Fi is not working. So I think it's been really, really traumatic for children and teachers as well. And I think once we start, that's why everyone's eager to go back to school. Parents, children, and school, teachers, we all want to come back as soon as possible. And how it shapes up is going to be interesting. But what has happened is that personalization of learning, I think, has begun, which is very, very important. Everyone in theory was talking about learning should be personalized, it should be our own learning goal. I think, as I was saying, the role of school and now the role of colleges also. People are saying that why should I go to university in England, spend 1 crore rupees? Why don't I just use that money for a startup of my own? So we are questioning these institutions like schools and colleges, and everyone has to remain relevant, and they have to innovate and say that this is why I matter. This is why it's matter. So as we're talking about, content could be on through technology, but the social aspect is where schools are going to be. So it may emerge that schools might become something like community centers now, or colleges also become more like community learning centers, where we have lifelong learning in schools, not just those 2 to 16-year-old kids. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And I think those schools which remain flexible, are fluid, are going to succeed. The ones who think that things are going to go back to normal, the way once COVID khatam ho jayega, we'll go back, I don't think they have a very long life ahead of them.
Thanks. And in fact, that's a big challenge, really. I'll come to each of the panelists now. And very briefly, this is the last round. So I'll ask each of you, and you have 1 minute each. In 2022, now going forward, we know we have to be prepared for the unexpected, the stop, start, you never know. And when, so keeping all these things in mind, the challenges of a blended or hybrid learning in mind, keeping in mind all these challenges, what will be the one big critical initiative or action from each of you? I'll start with you, Kanak, this time.
Sure, thanks. So I genuinely feel that all the learnings that we've had with incorporating blended is going to probably stay with us for a very long time. Hybrid, I do believe it will go away eventually, but I do believe that blended learning we'll have to take forward. The second big thing that I understand is that, we say it as a joke that in our country, everyone is an expert in education, but people who are the educators have no expertise whatsoever. But the other side of it is that, Rajneeshji, we understand that, a good idea can come from anywhere. And you should appreciate, respect that good idea coming in and try incorporate that in your working in your schools as well. That is one thing that we definitely want to take forward, because if anything, we've understood, appreciated, and digested it fully that parents are truly our partners in the teaching learning process. It has happened, and we are so happy about it.
Okay, so parents are the partners for the teachers, and you are looking at incorporating whatever good practices, idea that can be sent by even the parents. Okay, I'll come to you, Dr. Rathore. What will be your one action, most important action or initiative for 2022?
See, we all have learning of last 21 months. So how we have, continued the education of our children. See, what I feel, if anything will happen now, maybe some Omicron kind of variant, or because of this school will be asked to close. What I feel now, the weather across the country is not hot, at least. So government should not ask schools to close down physically. We can have open classrooms. We can ask children to sit keeping the distance of 2 गज की दूरी जो हमारे प्रधानमंत्री कहते हैं. So what I feel, see, it's okay with the children from well-off families, but every school of ours have EWS category also. In my office itself, I was struggling since morning to connect with the internet. I have 4 connections of internet in my office, but none of one. I am doing this, uh, webinar connecting with my mobile only. कोई भी internet connection काम नहीं कर रहा है. Some problem is there. So how can a person who is selling vegetable or pulling the rickshaw can manage all these things? So what I feel, all of us who are running 10+2 education institution, we should keep on asking children from at least from those kind of families to come to the school physically, and we can make arrangement maybe in the playground, maybe in the auditorium, maybe keeping the distance, so that their education should be ensured. The children from the well-off families can manage all these things, and I have very close example of my house help, or my the people who were working in my office, peon and all that, the kind of situation they have faced. So बच्चों का कोई दोष ही नहीं है, चाहे वो पेंडेमिक आया है, चाहे वो पॉल्यूशन की वजह से स्कूल बंद है, बच्चों का क्या दोष है? उनकी एजुकेशन तो अच्छी होनी चाहिए, कंटिन्यूड होनी चाहिए, चाहे वो किसी एफिलिएंट फैमिली से हैं, चाहे वो किसी भी पुअर फैमिली से हैं. So I will ensure in my system at least education of those children will not be hampered because of anything anymore.
That's a great and very noble thought, and really relevant at these times. Snehal, I come to you. What will be your main action point for 2023?
So for us at Ryan's, we believe there's a motto we say every morning in our assemblies, and that is forward ever, backward never. And the idea is just to keep moving forward. For the learnings that we have had, like I think it was Kanak or Amol who said about staying relevant. The idea is to allow autonomy, empower our community of our staff, both teaching, non-teaching, because livelihoods are not just of the teaching. There's also non-teaching down there at grassroots. But also the mentoring part has been a big aspect. Mentoring and reverse mentoring between our faculty, with our parents, with the children. The collaboration part is something that we want to keep taking forward. So there are a lot of learnings that we have had, and these are things that we like to just keep moving forward with, because in the process of that we will allow creativity to nurture, and I know new things will come in place, and new things will come in play as well, since it's going to be dynamic as we move along, and there's not going to be one uniform thing that's going to fit us all. We will all find our own unique ways and synergize both the models, and new models will come in play to make sure that learning happens and effective learning takes place, not just within the classrooms, or wherever our kids are at their own pace and time.
Amol, your point on this most important action.
Yeah, I think as I've been saying, I think it's about being flexible. I think experiment, flexible, go back, experiment, implement. This cycle is going to go pretty fast. I think we not have time. As long as I said, that's where fluidity and flexibility will come from. Constant experimentation from learning from others, experimentation from feedback from parents, experimentation from looking outside the industry and say, okay, fine, what are best practices that we can bring to education in schools. So I think keeping our ears and eyes open, getting the experimentation right, getting feedback from your own teachers, from parents, and keep trying that, and keep trying. If it works, scale it up. If not, dump it, try something else. And that's what's going to keep us alive for the next few months, I think.
Thanks. And Aarti, you will literally have the last word here. So what would you have heard the schools? So what, according to you, should be the biggest action point for the schools?
Okay. So all our discussions have revolved around flexibility and affordability and fluidity. Taking all of that into the picture, I would just say that I think one of our big takeaways would be making sure that technology becomes accessible and affordable for all the schools, so that they, as peer leaders of education providers in India, can provide that access to each and every student, even to the last mile. Every student coming from each social economic background can be catered to. It becomes our role, our imperative as an edtech company, to provide that kind of affordable system to each school. So I feel that our takeaway for the next coming some time would be that we ensure that we collaborate with schools to make sure that they have the kind of setup and support that they need, not just in terms of providing a hardware, but also software and training to the teachers, training the management, and the students and all the stakeholders involved, training everyone into adapting technology, so that the process of education is not hampered, and all the uh, blockages, all the setbacks that we have suffered in the last 1.5 year can slowly be overcome. We cannot expect those challenges to be overcome overnight. They will take some time. The damage repair will take a bit of time, but once we kind of train all the stakeholders involved into the process on an equal footing, and give them ownership of their own roles, and tell them or make them realize the importance of their roles into the system, we will be able to take the education process at a much faster, quicker, and a better pace. So
Yeah.
yes, that would be my takeaway from the session.
Thanks. And basically, even for all of us, the takeaway has been the importance of what I may say, obviously technology, but even bigger than technology, maybe handling the psychological and emotional impact on the students, even as we look for more a blended learning kind of model in the future. But how do we have to assimilate it into both the students as well as the teachers, so that a very productive student teacher engagement happens in whatever mode that's viable. And also, we have to look at many of the panelists mentioned ways to support that can be financially as well as emotionally students from different sections to cope with the situation in the current times. So thanks to all the panelists, and that has been a great and interactive discussion. So I wish all of you have a good day, and you may participate and look at some of the other sessions during the next 3 days. Thank you.